hold on this computer. Okay. And if you happen to say things, Andrew, that later on you think, oh, Neil, I think we better not, keep that part of the recording. We can always cut that out. So I don't want you to feel inhibited by our conversation tonight just because it's recording, but we can always edit things out if we need to. All right. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Andrew, thank you again for giving your time. And now you're Irishman, correct?
Scotsman. I'm a Scotsman.
Well, I'm getting mixed up because I'm half Irish, half Scotsman myself. So O'Connor and McKeown, we're pretty kind of brothers from another mother, so to speak. So I think that's wonderful. Anyway, so Andie's been in this business for 20 over years, like not necessarily log chain, but actually in the global sourcing business. And you make it very specific in the area of chemical, logistics, sourcing, sending here and there. Now, he has a lot of technical roles to the boardroom from Thailand to Iraq. And with his partner, they have a combined over 50 years in the chemical logistics and supply chain industry. The industry is very challenging, and Andie was just sharing before, it's actually much more challenging than many other industries when it comes to moving chemicals. And I know that, having worked for ExxonMobil, and I knew when they rolled out the original LPG big centres in Australia back in early 80s. And there was a lot of secret videos that were shown about what can happen if things go wrong. And it's probably all over the internet by now, but so I understand where you're coming from there, Andrew. And so you've set up this log chain, which is basically a software as a service. And in some ways, the vision of log chain is to revolutionize the whole document chain in the procurement, in the supply chain area of business to business around the world, in the global supply chain around the world. So a software as a service, which means that you're going to be the Microsoft front end for documented procurement, something like that, Andrew, and you can correct me. So again, you can talk more about that. I'm happy to allow you to share the screen and share your PowerPoint. Can I just hand it over to you, and can I get a hand clap for our guest tonight, given time to us? Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that great introduction, and thanks for the warm welcome, everybody. I'll just share my screen here.
And by the way, sorry to interrupt, Andrew. By the way, every one of you can download these slides through the Moodle in week 11. So please don't be inhibited by what you can see or can't see on the screen. You can download these slides. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, so that was a great introduction by Neil there. So, just a little bit of an expansion on that. Andie McKeown is my name. I've been originally from the UK, Scotland. I've been in Singapore now, calling that my base and home for nearly 14 years. Originally, I'm an engineer by trade, and then I moved into the world of logistics, specifically chemical logistics. And I've got a massive passion for the entire industry, and it's something that I really do enjoy. And what I'd like to do today is kind of take you through. Let me just get rid of these controls here. Just kind of take you through a little bit of an introduction, go all the way back to what is logistics, talk about some of the problems that we have in the modern world, talk about the importance of digital ecosystems and the industry, have a quick look at a case study involving some of the problems that we have in the world today, and then talk about, transport management, in the world of 2021 and beyond. And then I'll open it up to the floor, and hopefully I'll get some questions and comments from you all. Now, this is one of the biggest things that I love about logistics. Is it is completely underappreciated and it is just not understood. If you want to be a superhero, everyone talks about the Marvel Cinematic universe. But if you want to be a real superhero, go into logistics. And it is the second science on Earth. And a lot of people will talk about, logistics was a French word and it came about in the 18th century. All of this is not true. If you want to go back to the beginnings of logistics, you've got to go back even before the beginning of time. So there's evidence of logistics and supply chain management going back to 14,000 BC with the Uluburun shipwreck. This is a fascinating account, and the word logistics itself actually comes from the word logos, because logistics was the second science on Earth after numeracy, because everything that you've ever seen in the world has been created thanks to logistics and supply chain. Everything you've ever owned, eaten, or worn was only made possible thanks to logistics and supply chain. And in fact, it was from this genesis of logistics and supply chain that actually gave birth to the world that we see today, because it was the actual supply chains themselves that allowed the expansion of technology and knowledge around the world. Indeed, logistics was the very first information superhighway. If you were to get news, it always came from a trader. It always came from the people in logistics. It came from the Silk Road. It came from the docks. These were the people who had all of the information. So way before you had the internet, you had the Silk Road and you had logisticians who were the information superhighway. And for thousands of years, logisticians were at the cutting edge of information. But now they are lagging behind in a major way, and it is causing huge problems on a global scale. And a lot of this is down to data. So data, as you can see here, has exponentially outgrown your traditional industries of trade and finance. And even when you have major incidents such as the 2008 financial crisis, you can see everything took a dent except for data. The data growth will continue to grow exponentially, and every industry in the world is struggling to manage data. But in the world of logistics and supply chain, it is killing the world of trade and industry now, because the industry simply cannot cope with the amount of data, and they've always been an historical slow adopter of technology, which is just compounding the problem even further. Now, everybody talks about digital ecosystems, and it's quite often thrown around in it as a buzzword, but we all have a digital ecosystem in your pocket. The modern smartphone is one of the best examples of the digital ecosystem. When you take your typical iPhone, within that you've got numerous different apps. This is what we mean by a digital ecosystem. So that one device basically gives you access into an entire universe. Now, what is a digital ecosystem? Well, essentially you've got to have a device, something that will give you actual access to the data itself. And then of course, how are you going to get that data? That's going to come to you through the network, whether that's through cables, through IoT, through Wi-Fi. And then of course, you've got the applications which will actually manage that data itself. So it can be, large monolithic programs such as SAP, open kind of infrastructure plays such as Microsoft. You have web-based and you have bespoke systems. Now, the three of these then take you to the content. So that's the actual information itself, whether it's documentation, audio, multimedia, etc. So you need all of these elements to come together to basically create the digital ecosystem that we're all living in. This is something that we're all living in today, but it's only in our industry of logistics and supply chain that we're not managing this correctly. And the information explosion is about to get much bigger. It's about to go even faster through the world of IoT. Now, I'm not a big fan of buzzwords, but big data and IoT is here and it's here to stay. Last year, it's estimated that there was 50 billion new devices, IoT devices, that were added into the ecosystem. This is everything from smart devices to shipping containers now have telematics. to let you know not just position, but the temperature, pressures involved within the container, geo-fenced trucks, the amount of IoT devices in the entire system is just growing massively. And again, this just adds to more data, which creates an even bigger issue within our industry. Now, yes, we've got the devices, we've got the network, but there are no universal systems and there are no universal contents. It is staggering that, we're in the 21st century. We're sending billionaires to space for fun, and we can't send a shipping container from one side of the world to the other without using paper, clipboards, fax machines, Excel, lots and lots of Excel, and hundreds of emails. This is a major problem. And even beyond that, there's a deeper problem. Again, it's quite staggering. A lot of people are surprised by this, that in the entire world, there are only 2 standardized documents for global trade, only 2. The first being the bill of lading, obviously what you get from a shipping line as you're moving goods from A to B. And the second is the SDS, the safety data sheet. So that's a collection of documents that give you precautions and warnings about the properties of chemicals and other goods that are being shipped. That's it. Those are the only 2 standard documents on Earth. And this is one of the big problems that contributes to the overflow of data, which creates the typical miserable logistician. A typical person, typical white collar worker, even at a junior executive level, will be managing at least 200 emails per day. As soon as you start going into supervisory and middle management, that shoots up very quickly to 500 emails every single day. And as a logistician and a supply chain person, you will need to read all of them because there are risks by ignoring this information. So you've got analysis paralysis, you drown in information. And, we talk about disparate systems. And if you want to see a good visual representation is what you're seeing on the screen right here. And this is something I mentioned to Neil earlier. A typical logistician and supply chain professional will go into work, and a white collar worker sitting behind a desk, they will log into their computer and their primary interface will be email. But they will have anywhere between 6 and 20 other systems that they will have to interact with through various different logins just to create their own work environment. So what you can see here, the typical kind of mess behind an office desk, that's exactly what it looks like electronically as well behind the scenes, because there is no cohesive channel that is bringing all of this data together. And this comes down to one of the fundamental challenges of supply chain and logistics. It is so big, it is so complex, and it is so nebulous that a lot of people don't see the entire picture. A supply chain, it's exactly that. It's links in a chain. And most people are only familiar with their own link, and at the very most, the 2 interconnecting links either side. But very few people in the industry, even at leadership levels, actually have a true macro view of the entire supply chain that they're managing to be able to make important decisions. And again, this is a problem. Now, all of this fragmented systems and fragmented communication, it's still like we're working in the 1970s. All of these different fragmented approaches to trying to execute the supply chain can lead to very serious problems. And I'm not talking about 5 or 10% loss on a certain shipment. I'm talking massive human collateral consequences. You can see here we've got the Tianjin port explosion, the Beirut explosion last year, which the human impact of that is still ongoing, thanks to the food shortages it created, and also the MSC Flaminia. Now, all of these 3 cases combined, you're talking over $30 billion, over 250 people dead, over 750 people dead, and over 300,000 people made homeless, just from these 3 incidents alone. And if you take the MSC Flaminia, this is a really interesting case, and I would suggest that you all take a little bit of independent study to take a look at this, because it also sets some legal precedents, because the courts are now starting to hold logistics operators and even the shipping not the shipping companies, but the original manufacturers of these goods responsible for failures in their supply chain. The MSC Flaminia, that caused the destruction of this vessel, over $500 million in losses, and it came down to a container of chemicals sitting on quay in Houston for too long. That's it. As simple as that. That's what caused all of this, because the chemical that was inside, once it reaches a certain temperature, it undergoes what's called rapid polymerization, which is basically a runaway chemical reaction, which then creates fire and explosions. All of this was down to people not having the data. Something as simple as knowing how long a container was sitting on a dockyard, we can't even provide that in the 21st century. Now, to kind of give you an example of a micro example of a simple supply chain. Now, we did a workflow study with BASF, which is the world's largest chemical company by a very, very long way. Very well respected, very, very efficient in how they do things. And we did a workflow study for an internal shipment of liquid chemicals using tank containers. And a tank container you see on this diagram here, it's essentially a shipping container for liquid chemicals to be moved around. This was an internal shipment, so this meant BASF to BASF. Remember, this is a very, very sophisticated company, and this simple shipment generated over 112 email chains. Not 112 emails, but 112 email chains. This is an internal shipment. Can you imagine what these workflow studies look like when you've got complex supply chains where you've got up to 300 different stakeholders involved? The entire world is creaking at the edges, and this is why you need to start focusing on creating digital ecosystems within your supply chains to understand what's going on, not just with your first tier and second tier suppliers and vendors, but to every single person that's involved within the supply chain. This has to be the focus for the industries in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, talking about logistics in the next 5 to 10 years. I know that looks a little bit dramatic there. You know, the world as we knew it has ended, but it's true. We will never go back to the way things were done in the past. And again, this plays into having to create a better digital ecosystem for the entire industry. People are now accustomed to remote working. Look at this today, you know, we're all able to speak to each other today thanks to Zoom, and business is now adapted and used to that. And the transportation chains, they have to become a lot more robust and a lot more flexible. And that can only be done through transparency and visibility, which again goes back to digital information being accessible to everybody within the supply chain. And one of the biggest things that I talk about at the moment, the end of just in time. Now, this is something that I could have a completely separate talk on, because it's been a bugbear of mine for almost 2 decades now, because just-in-time manufacturing and just-in-time logistics has never really worked. And a lot of people are talking about shipping lines and COVID creating the current crisis that we see globally, which is now impacting everybody. They're blaming this on COVID. It's just not true. What COVID has done is brought to the surface the fragility and the inefficiency of global supply chains. You know, I did a recent podcast in Hong Kong, and they wanted to talk about, you know, the blockage of the Suez Canal, and it made me laugh, because this is a popular topic, because it's a nice picture and it's in the BBC, and you've got a ship stuck sideways in the Suez Canal. That's not even in the top 3 disturbances in global supply chains in the last 18 months. But going back to just in time, this is something that needs to be buried in the past. Just-in-time manufacturing, supply chain, and logistics was something that was developed by Toyota in Japan, and it's worked very well, and it still works well for them. But a lot of Western companies then copied this model, but did so incorrectly and without understanding the ecosystem. It's never the what, it's always the why. And that's what people weren't doing. They weren't looking at the why they were doing it. in that way. Japan has simpler supply chains, a lot more domestic, shorter supply chains. Just in time made sense for Toyota. They also integrated just in time throughout their entire business. So their manufacturing processes were not just dependent upon forecasts, but upon real live data from the forecourts actually selling the cars. So daily figures for the sales of cars was impacting the chemical company that made the ingredients and the additives that went into the chemical manufacture of the actual windscreens. That is a complete integration of just-in-time manufacturing and supply chain, but that was not done in the rest of the world. So how are we going to move things forward? We don't know. But one thing we do know for sure is we need to embrace digitalization, digitization, and create digital ecosystems. Otherwise, the world will grind to a halt. Now, guys, you know, I do kind of speak very, very fast, but I hope you managed to get the majority of that. And I'd love to hear any, you know, questions and comments that you might have on that information I've just shared.
Andrew, thank you very much for that. And I think it should spur a lot of questions. So, and Maria's got her hand up. Has anyone else got their hands up, or you're thinking about what to ask? And because every one of those slides have a question. Maria, what's your question first? Thank you. And then Vicky and Oliver.
So sorry, I was clapping.
Oh, very good. That's so cool. I love it. I love it. Okay.
Thank you.
And Vicky, are you clapping or what? Good question.
I am clapping, and at the same time, I have a few questions. So first of all, thank you, Andrew, for the very informative talk. So I have always been interested in blockchain and supply chain. And I just wonder, you have actually created very nice platform. Is this based on blockchain or based on cloud?
So that's a great question, and the simple answer is both. Now, blockchain, this is a really interesting and expansive topic, because if you go to our website, yes, our back end is blockchain, but you'll be hard pressed to try and find the word blockchain because it's overused and people use it as a buzzword. Look, we use blockchain, but we see it as a tool. I'm not a blockchain evangelist. I don't think it will cure cancer. I don't think it will help me walk on water, but it is the perfect technology for the world of supply chain and logistics. Because yes, there are other distributed ledger technologies out there, but the reason why blockchain works is the immutability, because the world of logistics is not a low trust environment, it's a zero trust environment. So yes, that is our back end. We actually have not designed our own blockchain because we just thought that was a very bad idea. What you should do is take these tools and utilize it to your own end. So our entire back end is actually Hyperledger Fabric managed by AWS. So essentially, my entire back end is handled by Jeff Bezos, because that allows me then to focus on me serving my customers with our product rather than getting confused. Think about it this way. If I was a plumber coming to fix the sink in your home, you would not care about the brand of the plumber or the wrench that I'm using to fix it. All you'd want me to do is to fix it. So view blockchain as a tool to be used, not as an actual silver bullet that fixes all problems.
Okay, very good. And Andrew, who are your customers, by the way? Are they the buyers or are they the suppliers? Or in order to get the most out of your blockchain, the buyers have to get their suppliers to agree on the other side of that transaction?
Yeah, so our customers is basically everybody. So if you ask, in 3 years' time, if you ask people what is blockchain, if you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different answers, because it's used by the security guard at the front of the plant to gate in the vehicles, because at the moment they've got checklists, which is on a clipboard, which is using paper. Is the right driver? Is it the right access code? Do they have the right training? Have they been given an induction? Is the truck in the right condition? Is the container in the right? All of this information we can actually do this all through blockchain. And the same for the production personnel. They can put in the amount of details that are loaded. The procurement people, it really is an information highway that connects all of the players together. So regardless of what your role is within the world of logistics and supply chain, blockchain will be your digital coalface. So regardless of your role, you will log into blockchain. That is your one interface. So for example, we did that workflow study I mentioned earlier with BSF. We managed to reduce the emails by 97% and completely eliminated all of the documents entirely.
Oliver.
Yeah, I think my two main questions were already answered. First of all, it's a really good sales pitch. I think everybody wants to order a pallet of blockchain now. Doesn't come in pallets, but it's a good sales pitch. No, I was indeed, first of all, curious, what is the backbone? Was it blockchain? Because it can double check accounts, right, from all sides at the same time, and it's always validated. But secondly, also because it runs on this new role of big data that we're using, right? How is the interface going to look for all these different applications? Because as you were saying, the security guard uses blockchain. The instead of 120 email chains, we're going down to about what, 3%. So what is this actual interface going to mean when it comes to shipping documents? Well, pretty much your operational day to day. Is it going to be? Yeah, please go ahead. Because I was very curious more on the pragmatic side, right, and the practical side. What does it look like? Looking like this blockchain?
Look, it's a great question. It's a great question, and this is something that we really focused on at the ideation stage of blockchain, because there's a massive disconnect still in the industry between the blue collar worker and the white collar worker. So if you take a look at, let's stay on blockchain. You look at all these blockchain trials. Everyone's doing a blockchain trial. Everybody's doing it. And they're like, oh, we put this bill of lading on the blockchain. But then when you look at it, all of the inputs into that system, into that bill of lading, were manual and still analog. Then they put the actual bill of lading itself on the blockchain and go, oh, it's blockchain technology. Nonsense. That is absolutely nonsense. And, excuse my language here, but crap in, crap out. This goes back to computers. So what you have to do is capture the information where it is created and where it is interacted with. And that is done at the blue collar worker level. You stop giving blockchain ideas to C-suite personnel because they just love buzzwords. People who need the technology are on the ground. It's the warehouse operator. It's the truck driver. These are the people who need the technology. And that's why we've got the blockchain app. So if you're out there actually conducting physical interactions with the world of logistics, then you use your smartphone, and you can take pictures of things, you can do direct entry, you can interact with IoT devices. So regardless of the complexity and maturity and technological ability of the supply chain that you're executing on, blockchain can interact with that. We can capture it through images, through data entry, IoT, QR scanning, all of that. So those are the people who are on the ground. So that information is captured. So let's give a micro example of that. So today, if you go to go and load chemicals or any other goods, you will arrive at a factory, a truck, a trailer, and a shipping container. And again, that security guard is going to check all of your credentials and the units. All of this needs to be checked before you even get through the gate. Then you've got to go to the weighbridge. And the weighbridge, they will give you a piece of paper, an actual printed ticket with the empty weight. Now, that ticket, as well as the empty weight and the loaded weight, that needs to be kept by the weighbridge operator, which will then be filed by someone else, which will then be archived by someone else. That's the physical, but now they're going to input the information electronically. So that will go into, very likely, an Excel sheet on an old rusty desktop that's probably running Windows 95, and I'm not kidding you. Now, that is just the weighbridge operator. The poor trucker, now you see where the information goes. The trucker, the actual truck driver, needs to phone his traffic controller and give that data over the phone. So you can have mistakes, fraudulent activities. That traffic controller gets that data, who then gives it to their customer service, who then enters it into their system, who then emails it to the 3PL. Oh, but it's an urgent order, so they also have to call the 3PL. The 3PL gets that data. They need to pass that on to the customer. Remember, the customer is where the actual truck is. So the 3PL gives the information to the customer, also to the shipping line, also to customs, then to the government, and to the overseas agent, the domestic agent, and the actual final consignee. And all of this is done twice because you've got to do it at the other end as well. This is crazy. This is what we are doing today. It's so backward. So now if you take LogChain, for example, you turn up, the driver's got the LogChain app. Yeah, you can scan, you can scan the QR code. Yes, he's been inducted. Yes, we've got everything here. You can go through nice little tick boxes. Yes, the truck is not on fire. The container's in good order. And again, when you get to that weighbridge, you can do this through either IoT interaction, QR scanning, taking pictures, or direct form data. Once that information is captured, it's now immutable because it's now on the blockchain and every single person sees that information. Customers don't know that the wrong goods have been loaded or the wrong weights have been loaded today until they get the bill of lading, which can be from 3 to 10 days after it was loaded. So you're getting the information faster, but no, that's nothing special. What's special is, see, that's digitization. What the world needs to do is digitalization. You don't want to take paper and turn it into a PDF. That's digitization. Digitalization is capturing the data from different points in the supply chain and transmitting that so the entire supply chain can be executed. That's digitalization. So what does that mean to the customer? So you can put automated workflows in. So for example, you can set up a rule. If there's a delta of say 250 kilos plus minus, then it can go, no problem. If it's above that, then they have to alert you and you, the human, will make the decision on that. That's the difference. That's digitalization. That's what we need to do.
Okay,
Andrew,
thanks, Andrew. But
sorry,
for end-to-end, for end-to-end interaction, right? So are we going to look at, first of all, massive server capacity to harness all this data going back and forward at all times? And secondly, we have so much, well, literally change going from end to end. Is every person literally in the chain or section going to be given a separate ID throughout the chain? Like, how is the end-to-end interaction going to go via the blockchain environment? Is everybody gonna be loaded into the blockchain environment, and we can simply converse with our job title, let's say, under a certain company? Or we're looking at a standard flow under the blockchain, in the workflow? Do we look at a small segment for our own job title and job field? Just trying to visualize how it's going.
These are great questions. Keep them coming. So in terms of data, we are going to be massively ecological and efficient compared to how everything's done today. So a lot of people are now looking at blockchain, specifically crypto, in terms of the energy involved. And the people, after they've finished with crypto, they're going to start looking at other blockchain and the energy that's involved. But going back to that example I gave you earlier of the weighbridge ticket, how many times today is that data duplicated and archived and handled and transmitted in a normal supply chain? You're talking dozens and dozens of times. And each person who handles it, they need to archive that and they need to store that. With blockchain, it's only that information. So you end up with just one string of information that people have access to. So instead of dozens of strings, you only have one. So in terms of the ecology of data, because this is something that I've been quite focused on even before blockchain, ecology of data, because you quickly run out. So you need to be focused on that. Now, who gets access to what? That's quite an astute question. And the way we're doing this is we're driving this through personas. So for example, a weighbridge operator has no need and no business to be able to launch an RFQ for sea freight tenders. They don't need to have access to the finance module or anything. And this is decided by management. So if a weighbridge operator, if that's all they do, so you've got a combined security, front of house, and weighbridge operator, when they log into blockchain, the only thing they will see on their mobile app is a gate entry list, who is coming that day, what needs to be weighed with all of the reference numbers. That's it. And this is something that I've been wanting to do for years, because normally when you log into a system, you're trying to find your digital cold face, and you'll go into one menu, then another sub menu, and there's a secondary login, and you've kind of got to go through all of these different digital corridors to actually get to where you need to do work. You need to do this agile. The only way that you can execute the future is by keeping it simple and keeping it agile. I keep saying to our engineering team, I will sacrifice functionality for agility 7 days of the week. If it starts to slow us down, I'll shoot it in the head and we'll find another way of doing it. You know, and that's the way that you need to do this. You need to be ruthless and have everything persona driven. Now, in terms of who gets access, now that is defined by the floor owner. Now, the floor owner could be the actual consignor, it could be the consignee. So if you've got a push shipment, you know, the owner of the would be the consignor, but they don't want to do all of the floor management. So they actually allow the 4PL to do it. So then you have different groups. So only certain groups can get, and again, this is all controlled. But let's say the consignee, they want to start getting access to this because, oh, you know, it's like shiny extra data and, you know, management, oh, they love dashboards. Oh, it's got dashboards. Yes, we want access to that. You know, so then they might speak to the consignor, we want access, and it's completely flexible. Again, because it has to be agile. Now, it's very interesting that you mentioned workflow there, and I love that you brought that up. What we are not doing is creating the workflows for our customers. We are not doing that because, my God, we'll get slowed down and we'll have to have an army of people who are engineering workflows. And plus, what works today will not work tomorrow. We are giving to our customers, there you go, LogChain in a box. You create your own workflows. It's as simple as that, because what we don't want to become is the SAP. So it's like, oh, we want you to change this. Okay, give me $10,000. Because that's the problem with old legacy systems. All they are, if you boil it down and take away all their nice fancy banners, are complex and not very clever databases. That's all they are. So again, going back to the same example, is we need to have an infrastructure, independent infrastructure that's agile. Microsoft Windows for the supply chain world.
Very good. Kate, question.
Thank you for the presentation, sir. I have quite a trivial question, maybe, but could you name the most significant challenge that your company faced during COVID-19?
Well, that's definitely not a trivial question. And to be honest, we're quite lucky. So for the majority of COVID-19, we've actually been in submarine mode because we didn't want people to know what we were working on and how we're doing it. Because again, like I said earlier, it's never the what, it's always the why. And our approach is completely unique. So we wanted to keep that under wraps. So people who have got literally hundreds of millions of dollars in their back pocket, we didn't want them to take our idea and go ahead with it. But I would say the biggest challenge for us during COVID-19 has really been getting in front of people. Zoom has been fantastic, but for a new concept that is LogChain, it is a new concept. Getting in front of people and spending time with them is the most important, because it's getting people to change behaviors. Actually, I've got if you can allow me to give a little bit of a tangent here, I've got a fantastic story that I tell everybody. Every company that I've ever gone into, from Iraq, Asia, Africa, I always tell the same story. And I think it will lead into this quite nicely. So you have a mother and daughter making a traditional roast dinner, a typical UK roast beef dinner. So you got the roast beef, you got the Yorkshire puddings, you got all the nice vegetables, and the young daughter is helping out the mother. And the mother says, okay, they've done the vegetables. Okay, before we do the meat, we need to cut off 1 inch before we put it in the roasting tin. And the daughter is curious and young. So she asks, but mother, why do we cut off 1 inch before we put it in the tin? And she gets immediately scolded. You don't question me, you don't ask. I was shown this. I've been doing it this way before you were born. I was shown how to do this by my mother. You don't ask questions, you do as you're told. Okay, well, okay, it's a bit of an overreaction, but okay. Now, the next week, the young girl is now at her grandmother's house, again making a traditional British roast dinner. And they've done the vegetables and it's time for the meat. And she's so nervous, but, you know, she's curious. She says, Grandma, you know, why do we cut 1 inch off the meat before we put it in the tin? And the grandma just smiles and says, oh, darling, that was many years ago. I have a bigger tin now. That is change management. That is the way people think. If they're always given the same way to do it and they don't understand why, they'll defend it religiously. Now, what you need to be in that story is to be the inquisitive young girl and always ask why. It's never what, it's always why.
Very nice. Very
Okay.
nice. Yeah. Vicky.
It's me, is it?
Yes, it's you.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, I want to ask one more question. So Andrew talked about actually there's a private infrastructure which you're building right now. So I think maybe you're talking about private blockchain, and would it be very expensive to for companies or for the users to implement this system?
No, and you know, I really didn't intend this to be a kind of blockchain sales pitch because I thought we was going to be talking about wider issues. But look, if you're going to ask me questions about blockchain, I'm happy to talk about it all day. To be honest, it is unbelievably cheap. It really is, because if you look at a typical supply chain, international cross-border, you're talking about 30 different stakeholders. Traditional technology is CapEx based, so you're looking at SAPs and other solutions like that. This technology that we're using is blockchain, and it's only expensive if you want to make it expensive. I use the example that we're the Microsoft Windows for the supply chain world. We're even a similar price point. So for a white collar worker, so you're a logistics manager, $25 a month for the license. You're a blue collar worker, $10 a month for the license. Because keep it light, keep it agile. But remember, we're not charging one or two people in the supply chain, we're charging everybody. Which means we can keep a low price point because everybody's paying. Everyone's paying into the system. And this was, again, this was one of the hardest bits at the ideation stage was, who's this system for and who pays for it? And what we quite quickly realized is unless you have an independent system that benefits everybody, it will never work. It will just never work because you still end up with disparate systems. So you see there are different people out there who are trying to fix the problems with one silo or maybe one or two silos in improving communication between these one or two silos. Again, you've still got the problem of you'll end up condensing 60 different systems down to 30, but you've still got 30 different systems. The only way to do this is to have one system. Now, we are using private blockchain, and so it's a private permission blockchain. The reason why we're doing that is our industry is not ready for public blockchain yet. It just isn't. And it will just scare the living hell out. And, you know, the majority of the boardroom are still staffed by baby boomers, and they find technology and blockchain terrifying. So if you said you're using a public blockchain, they think that Doris in the UK can read their trade secrets. That's not how the technology works, guys, but it's going to be a few years before they understand that. And also tokens. Look, tokens are absolute brilliant use case in the industry because it's for asset management. Everything to do with logistics and supply chain is asset management. It's a no-brainer that you attach, for example, a token to a shipping container. But unfortunately, those greedy idiots in 2018 with all of their ICOs have ruined the game for everyone for at least 5 years. So I've said to everybody internally, don't use buzzwords, use blockchain as little as possible, and never, ever say the word token or you lose the audience. But we will move into tokenization in the future. And I'm not talking about having crazy prices, have a utility token that doesn't increase in value. And then eventually we will move into public blockchain. But I think that will be at least 5 years, probably 10 years away.
Andrew, thank you. Oh, I've got a question. So I might have to explain this question, but what is the best area to fire the detonator of your service? That is the best area of the supply chain where you can start the revolution where it will catch on and it will grow as fast as possible in uptake of your technology platform.
Again, that's a brilliant question. And the way we're trying to tackle this is through two different ways. One of it is a top-down approach, so essentially forced adoption. Now, this is the perfect world approach, and this will be the longest way to do it. So I mentioned BASF earlier. They are a German company. They are a very German company. And every few years, they will bring out a new tool, a new piece of technology that will be used in their supply chains, typically a procurement tool. They will roll that out without any engagement with even their most important partners and vendors. They will simply send you an FYI email. Use this or don't do business with us. It's as simple as that. So that's one forced adoption model. But that will take time, and it's also more difficult, and it can also create mistrust. The best place that we found to do this is at the 3PLs and the 4PLs, because they are doing the majority of the work. They have the majority of the sight on most of the information, and they are the people who are being strangled by so many different forms of communication and data, and they're responsible for everything. So these are the people who will benefit very, very quickly. And because they have more of a macro view, going back to the giant elephant, what is it? They have more of a macro view, so they can see the benefits. Those are the two different areas that we're looking at. But there's also a third that we're doing. So we're talking to regulatory bodies and also ancillary players in the world of logistics. So one of those is the TT Club. So the TT Club is an insurance company, and it's pretty much the Lloyd's of London for the world of logistics. They insure and underwrite 80%, 80, of all the world's containers. So even if you know a company that they do their insurance through this, behind them, it will be TT Club. They do 80% of the world. In 2019, 30% of all of their claims globally by value was due to cargo contamination. Cargo contamination always comes down to missing, fraudulent, and incorrect paperwork. Guys, blockchain is going to change that. So then you have people like TT Club going, okay, Mr. Logistics Player, I have good news and bad news. Good news is if you sign up to blockchain, you'll save money, and this is your new insurance premium. If you don't, then this is not a telephone number. This is your new insurance premium.
Wow. I can see the number fourth, those 4 areas. I can see the fourth one as being a very important partner in the future. Yeah, Audrey, question.
I would like to ask something about COVID too. I would
Yes.
like to ask what are some of the lessons that the logistics industry can learn from the havoc during the pandemic?
It's agility. I would say it's agility, because people talk about robustness in supply chains, but robustness by its very nature will bring rigidity. I think agility is far better than robustness, because if COVID has shown us anything, that anything can happen. Force majeure, that's a title you will come to hate because it gets thrown around in the industry all of the time. But what can happen will happen, definitely in the world of logistics and supply chain. So being agile, being able to adjust your plans and your partners is probably the way forward. Agility always wins over robustness. But I think the biggest lesson is everybody understands we can't continue the way we have been. I think that has been, they knew for maybe 5 or 10 years before COVID that their time was coming to an end, but now the game is over. Everything has to change. And it's not just logistics companies, the regulatory people are saying this, governments are saying this. Time to change, guys. It's time to up your game.
Wow. Maria, are you still waving, or you have a question?
I have a question this time.
Please go.
Thank you, sir, for your presentation. I have a question about a comment you made. You said, is it the end of GIT? I think throughout the course of my degree, we've learned that GIT is a good thing because it helps streamline the supply chain. So what do you mean by your comment, the end of GIT?
What I mean is the way it's being deployed at the moment. So the majority of people who employ just in time, they just think about saving money. They think about having less inventory. They don't employ just in time. There's nothing wrong with just in time as a philosophy. Toyota invented it, Toyota perfected it. But there are very few companies who actually have genuine JIT from top to bottom in their business. All they use JIT for is a buzzword and a cost-cutting method. That's it. If employed properly throughout the entire supply chain, I agree, it's a good thing. But hardly anybody does that. It is become outdated. So there's two ways of looking at this. Post-COVID world, you either start employing JIT correctly, which will come down to having better access to data, which takes you back to data ecosystems, or you find a new flexible way of working, which means faster, better data, which means digital ecosystems again. So whether you take door A or door B, the answer will be digital ecosystems.
Wow. Wow. So cool. Gabriella. Gabriella, hello.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Neil.
By the way, Maria, did you want to follow up on that question? What are you thinking?
No, thank you for elaborating.
Yeah, it's so cool. Okay, Gabriella?
Yeah, Andrew, I would like to ask, is blockchain linked with Liner website? Because like for forwarder, like agent, we like check the container through the Liner website, like with the BL numbers and the container numbers. So is it linked? Like
Yeah, do you know what? I love the detailed questions that I'm getting here. So right now, so we're still quite early stage. So right now we've got the foundation. So you've got your base log chain. So that is your Microsoft Windows. But we are bringing out new modules as well. So for example, this month, very, very proud to say that we're bringing out our digital clearance module. And this is a very, very powerful piece of kit. It's going to allow our customers to do digital customs clearance and regulatory filing in over 12,000 ports around the world. So the number one in the world right now in this niche within a niche within a niche is CargoWise. They're used by DHL, they're used by everyone. We're going to destroy them by the end of the year by usability, price, and also the extent of our services. We've put a lot of work into this. It's just going to be, we're going to smash them. Now, next year, that's the liners. So like you said, the shipping lines. So let's look what happens today, right? Your booking gets dropped, yeah? Or, you know, they've done a blank sailing. The ship is now, you know, it's going to skip, say, for example, Port Klang. Now, you need to find out another booking for that. So that means if you've got contract rates, let's even just pretend you've got contract rates. So even if you've got contract rates with 6 other lines, that means you've got to go into 6 other systems, 6 other portals, 6 other logins, 6 other different processes, all to try and replace this one booking. That's the world we live in at the moment. In Q1 next year, we have our shipping line management module, which will roll off the production line. And this will give you one window. So again, you basically manage all of the world's shipping lines. And yes, we do have them on board. So we'll be able to manage all of the world's shipping lines, your bookings, your bill of ladings, your data, everything will be able to be done through one window, log chain window.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, because now it's like a huge problem for everyone, like the blank sailing, those kind of like port congestion. Yeah, I think it would be great if you have the Liner platform.
Yeah, and look, we're able to bring everyone together because we're completely independent. So unfortunately, I've had to say no to more money than I've said yes to in terms of investors, because the most high-profile blockchain enterprise in the world at the moment, in terms of logistics and supply chain, is TradeLens, and that's a joint venture between IBM and Maersk. And Maersk, if you guys don't know, is not only the world's biggest shipping line, but it's also the most hated. They're not independent. That's why we fiercely protect our independence at blockchain, because how else are you going to trust us? If you think we've got some kind of vested interest, then you're not going to trust us. So we have to be independent.
Yeah, I just now understand why you didn't list the shipping companies in your top 4 areas of igniting your service, Andrew. That's so cool. All right.
But you know what's quite interesting is the shipping lines, if we have to, we'll give log chain to them for free, because guys, you need to understand something. Shipping lines are like banks. Charges go in one direction only. And it made me laugh. In 2008, people talked about the power that the banks had over the world. And it made me giggle because I said, wait till you find out the power that shipping lines have. Last year was the most profitable year in human history for shipping. And the US, the UK, EU, China, all of them told the shipping lines to stop. And they just ignored it and just carried on. This year is going to make last year look like a bad year. Can any of you think of an individual, a company, a country who could stand up to the US, UK, EU, and China if they were annoyed? No one. Shipping lines can. That's where the power lies. So if we have to, we'll give it to them for free. So I don't want to pick a fight with them. We're just going to use them.
Just, Andrew, on bring those two things together. Number one, the question about COVID challenge, and number two, shipping. You mentioned in your talk, and Andrew, thank you so much for just giving your generous time to the class this evening. It's wonderful. Andrew, you mentioned the Ever Given, and we all know the catastrophe that caused in terms of just holding up everything. And that's not over because it's going through a court system and all that. But you said that wasn't even a big event when it comes to other things that people don't know about, that are not attracted by the media. What were some of the other things that wasn't attracted by the media, but was just, very expensive for the shipping world or the global supply chain world?
Number one, I would say, was the Yantian disruption. So Yantian port in northeast China was taken down by COVID, and the entire terminal went down. The Yantian disruption created multiple Ever Givens, to put it very, very simply.
Wow.
The other one is port congestion. Now, this is a very fascinating subject, actually, port congestion. So what has the A380 got to do with port congestion? Now, it's a bit of a trick question. Everybody in the world says bigger is better, right? So you had the 747. 747 changed global travel, made it cheaper. It allowed everyone to go on holiday, and everyone said, okay, bigger's better. So we'll build bigger than the 747, and we couldn't do it for years. And then Airbus beats Boeing to the punch and brings out the A380, this colossal machine. We're now going to have these massive economies of scale, and we're going to make things even cheaper. No, because it created congestion at airports, and the airports turned around and said, we're not interested in your A380. We need to do engineering designs because it's massive. Also, the heights are different, and it's taken longer for the turnarounds. We want faster turnarounds. This is why the A380, as much as look, I'm an engineer by trade. I love it. I think it's a fantastic machine, and it's the favorite airplane for me to fly on. But it was a commercial disaster and failure, and everybody is getting rid of them because you want the faster turnaround. So it's the Boeing Dreamliners. That's where everybody's going to now. Now, how that relates to the ports is because I remember the Emma Maersk, the very first EEE super container carrier. That was 18,000 TEUs. Massive, yeah, absolutely massive. But now you've got the world's biggest ship is now 24,000 TEUs. These ports just cannot handle the discharging of these. Before you used to be able to turn a ship around in hours. I remember those days. Now you're talking, it can be multiple days to turn this around. And the world has not caught up. Long Beach, one of the biggest ports in the world, they've only just moved to 24-hour operations, and nobody's using it. So everything's getting these backlogs. It's all stacking up at the ports. It's a lot of congestion, a lot of ships waiting out at sea. So I'd say that's the number two. And the third one, and yes, I know this is recorded, is profiteering. I'm sorry, but the shipping lines, they took vessels out of schedules because they wanted to drive the prices up, and no one was going to stop them. So blank sailings, all of this kind of thing, and sticking to slow steaming. I remember back in 2006, the container vessels were moving through the water like speedboats, fast as you can. Nobody cared about fuel. Nobody cared about cost. I remember my customers, they didn't care about price increases. They just, Andy, if you got the space, you're going to get it there on time. 2006, we were all living a fantasy. I remember those days. Me and my colleagues said, "This is fake money. We're making fake money because this is not sustainable." And we're right. And then 2008 came along, and now you've got slow steaming, you know, to preserve the fuel. But instead of sending these ships faster like they used to in 2006, they're preserving their profit margins. And sorry, a lot of the blame sits on the shipping line shoulders.
Wow, wow. Just to add to your A380, Andrew, another problem is, well, actually, you used it as an analogy, but a direct connection to cargo, they found that with the 747, it's, you know, instead of retiring them, they're perfect to move into cargo carrying. The A380 cannot be moved into cargo carrying. They cannot refit. And so, you know, that's a direct analogy as well as the analogy you gave, Andrew. So, and Lisa, question. Hi, Lisa.
Yep. Right. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much. But I think I will this is like an easy question, I guess, because I feel that your platform is very good and also like it's very technology. So I'm just saying like whether is it like user friendly, because a lot of the higher ups usually like baby boomers, like the managers, and then you know, they're not very tech savvy in terms of this. So I'm just asking whether they can use this proficiently, and also like if suddenly like the blue collar they input like a wrong you know, picture of the package or something, can they immediately remove it from the system, or like cancel the picture, or it need to be sent twice? Yeah, I'm not sure how it works also. Yeah, thank you.
Again, really, really good questions tonight. I wish my investors were as smart as you lot, honestly. It's recording. But look, these are some really, really good questions. Now, the design is really, really important, especially at the blue collar level. I'm less concerned about the white collar level because everyone's had to work with crap systems in the past that I had to use. I'm more concerned about the blue collar worker because, look, this is not arrogance. This is not Angmo arrogance at all, but it's just a brutal truth. Regardless of where you are in the world, whether it's Texas or Zambia, the people on the ground who are blue collar workers in the world of logistics, because of the low pay, are quite often not literate in their own mother tongue. So that's why we've got to be extremely user friendly. It has to be icon driven. It has to be intuitive. You know, I'm not a fan of Apple products by a long way, but I think one of the greatest things that they have done is created a very user friendly, intuitive operating system, and even on the mobile apps. So that's very much where we need to be. And, you know, the poor engineering team, I've told them, if we don't win an award within 2 years for our UI and UX, we're going to burn the lot to the ground and start again, because it has to be user friendly. Now, in terms of the white collar workers, the leadership, they only care about dashboards. So we're going to give them pretty dashboards to look at. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's just the truth of it. But what we're going to allow the middle managers to do, instead of spending your time in PowerPoint and creating all these nice, pretty dashboards for your boss, it'll all be done automatic. And, you know, we do want to make it user friendly. And, you know, I keep saying 3-click maximum. So no matter where you are to go to another place, we want to have 3 clicks and that's it. So that's why we want it to be extremely user friendly. Now, ask me in 2 years' time about my UI UX journey, and I'll probably have even less hair than I do right now. Look, please don't misunderstand. I've got a very gregarious personality, as you might have gained from tonight, but please don't ever mistake that for arrogance. I know we're going to have a massive learning. Well, it's not going to be a learning curve, it's going to be a learning wall. And I'm going to be banging my head off that for the next couple of years. But we need to get feedback from the people on the ground. Those are the people I care about. Get the blue collar workers happy, then we'll focus on the white collars. And the leadership, they'll be content with the pretty dashboards.
Talking about feedback, did you get feedback from BASF?
Sorry?
You say you know you're getting feedback. Did you get feedback from BASF, BASF, or or that's just a case study?
Yeah. I think one of the best questions that we got there was, right, okay, Andy, we can see where we can get the savings. And actually, they pointed out that the savings were much higher than we originally thought. And a very astute question was, okay, we can see where the savings, where's this going to hurt us? Which I thought was a really good question. And I said, well, it'll hurt you in a few different ways, I'll be honest. One of it is in some areas you will end up paying more. So for example, food grade containers, yeah? Unfortunately, guys, a lot of the food that you've eaten is tainted by chemicals because everyone in the industry lies. Because chemical containers, you know, to get them in the right place is very difficult, and people aren't going to pay for empty repositioning. What they will do is they'll do a chemical shipment and then they'll change the prior cargo on the inspection certificates. This is extremely common practice and everyone has one eye closed about it. And, you know, you cannot, once you've put chemicals into a food grade container, that's it. It will never be a food grade container itself, because stainless steel, ooh, stainless steel, it's impervious. No, it's not. It's a crystalline structure. So there was an example in the UK at a brewery. So this is a very serious story because it involves beer. Now, there was a brewery that had a massive batch of beer go off spec. So it could not be used. It was outside the specifications. And they traced the problem back to an ISO tank, a tank container, and it was being contaminated by a chemical 13 loads back. That's how far back the contamination had happened. So in those areas, they are just going to have to pay more, but that's better for the consumers. So they accepted that. The other area is they're going to have to start paying people on time. Unfortunately, a lot of big companies abuse their position and pay people late. So, and this is what really upsets me as well. You could have a mom and pop operation in Indonesia, father and son team. They've got one truck, 2 trailers, and they get a contract with a major corporation. It's fantastic news. And the major corporation says, sure, we'll pay you every 30 days. They don't. They'll pay them 90, 120 days. And this used to get me really angry in the industry, because if you're supposed to pay somebody on 30 days, pay them on 30 days. Because if you pay them on 31, that means they have provided you 1 day of trade finance solutions. I've always said this to my customers in the past. You pay me to move molecules around. I will do that. I'm not here to do trade finance. That's what banks are for. And all these multi-billion-dollar businesses, they will use small companies as their own trade finance solution. And it's disgusting. What we're going to do with our system is, you've done your job, everything's confirmed, okay, you get paid. That's it.
Thank you. And Sijin, question?
I think Adrian raised his hands first. Yeah.
Oh, Adrian, I didn't see you.
Yeah,
Where are you?
it's all right. Thank you, Sijin. Hi, Mr. Andrew. Thanks for the great presentation. Just out of curiosity, right? Since you mentioned about digitalization, I was wondering if there will be any impact of cryptocurrency or digital currency upon supply chain or logistics in the future moving forward.
I'm definitely not a crypto expert here, so I might be completely incorrect on this, but I don't think there will be any impact whatsoever from crypto in the terms of logistics and supply chain. I think there will be an impact, a positive one, through the decentralized finance, which will come through blockchain. So, this is something that we are going to offer in the future, because all of the players on the system, it's on the blockchain, so the data's immutable, then you're able to go to banks and get a better price for your trade finance. Decentralized finance, I think, will have one of the biggest impacts. Together with digitalization, I think decentralized finance will have one of the biggest impacts on the entire industry over the next 10 years. And what it will do is it will level the playing field for a lot of SMEs and micro businesses. So the world, 40% of world trade is from SMEs. If you look at Australia, that shoots up to 80%. So improving liquidity and trade finance solutions will benefit literally everyone.
Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned
that. Sorry,
but...
Lisa, I realized there was part of your question I didn't answer about if the truck driver makes a mistake. So with blockchain, so sorry for missing that, but we'll come back to that now. With blockchain, once the data is on the blockchain, it can never be gotten rid of. Now, that's not a big problem as it sounds. So let's say, you know, they did put the wrong information in there. How that will be caught is because you need to have two people to agree. So if the truck driver puts in the wrong information, then the weighbridge operator is going to catch that, or it will get caught further down the line. All you have to do is re-put that information straight in. Now, what it will do is it will keep a record of that mistake, but then there will be another record which will essentially overwrite that one. So that's your primary use of data, but that original entry will always be there. So you'll know who did it, when, and where that data entry was done. And this is also one negative element of moving to blockchain technology. And this is something I've warned customers about. You might feel stupid for the first 12 months, but don't worry, everybody will, because it's going to make everything transparent.
I love your example of the 40% of world traders SMEs, Andrew. And why I'm saying that is that because I've spent probably 3/4 of this course talking about global supply chain from the SME point of view rather than the multinational. So I'm glad you said that. That's lovely. Xixin, question.
Yep. Hi, Andrew. So thank you for spending the time with us. So I'm not sure if this question is repeating, but so let's say when we are developing solutions like IoT solutions for a company, we are working on use cases. So I would like to ask, like, when blockchain is working with, let's say, BASF, so which stage or which areas of that development or the adaptations of the solution is most complicated or most challenging, as you think? Yeah.
It's another great question. I would say it's not a technological challenge. It's a human challenge. The problem is not what's in the desk or on the desk. It's what's sitting in front of the desk. That is the biggest problem. It's about changing people's mentality, because our technology, we've designed it in a way to be very, very user-friendly. So all of our APIs are open-faced. So, because again, we don't want to be a development company, excuse me, charging huge sums of money. We want customers to do their own integration, and we can do this very cheaply and very easily with open-faced APIs. But it's getting to that point of understanding things are going to have to change. And this comes down, everyone's petrified in our industry. You mentioned transparency and people run to the hills, you know, and one of the biggest pushbacks we've seen is from operational personnel. So you've got Bob. Now, Bob works in a warehouse. Bob's been with the company for 30 years, and he's actually got the ear of the owner. He's been there, you know, he's part of the actual furniture. He doesn't want transparency in the system because it's going to show up when he makes a mistake. Because the thing is with logistics, there's always a lot of moving and shaking, and you mess this up and you juggle this here. So you have to accept that, you know, it's going to change company cultures quite a lot, because unfortunately in logistics, everything's life and death. You know, nothing in logistics, you know, you never say, when do you need this doing? No one ever goes, when you can. Everything's the most urgent order ever in the world. You know, there is no kind of sense to this. So the biggest change has to come from the people, you know, and they have to accept that there will be change. The problem's not a technological one, the problem's human.
Thank you.
I love that. So any question from anyone who hasn't asked a question yet? Because I can say that next year when we teach this again, we will be having much more integration of the logistics in what we're teaching. So this is a very important area, everyone. It's 8:15. Would you like to say final words, Andrew?
Yeah, definitely. Please, guys, when you're going out into your industry, do not offer a commoditized service. Everybody races to zero in our industry. How can we do this cheaper? And yes, this comes from procurement people. Procurement is not Excel, you know, filter and go to the cheapest, yeah? Proper procurement is looking at the whole service. That's what you should be doing, whether you're providing a service to an external customer or an internal one. Look to build a service because it builds a relationship. If you compete at a commoditized level, you will be treated as a commodity. You need to build a relationship and you need to build solutions for your customers. Don't become a commoditized player.
That's wonderful. Andrew, look, I've learned a lot just from listening to your answers to the questions, everyone, tonight. And I just want to give you a big thank you. Like, I've learned a few things I learned. I've just made a few notes here that, number one, that the two big document areas of logistics today that you cannot run away from is the bill of lading and the SDS. That's a safety data sheet. Okay, that's all right. You should have known it. And, you know, and the hundreds of emails a day that procurement teams and different positions in logistics have to manage, and the data is just going out of control, doubling from less than 2-3 years ago. Amazing. I also learned about the disasters, like $30 billion in costs, 70 dead, 300,000 homeless. We also learned from the case study with BASF, with the opportunity to reduce their documentation by 90%. And we also, you know, and related to that was that, you know, COVID has brought to the surface, COVID hasn't created a problem itself, but it's brought to the surface the fragility of the global supply chains, and especially across industries that thought that they could have something like JIT, but that's different from how Toyota was able to do it, because they have a nice little system in Japan. And so what works for Toyota doesn't necessarily work in other areas of the world, even in the same industry. So there was you know, that was number 3. Then we got number 4, when we all asked about the weakest link. And I think you ended up in the last penultimate and last sentence you were talking about was the human challenge. And in response to the question about what is the area to fire your detonator, number 5 was, well, there's 4 areas: brand customers, 3PLs, 4PLs, regulatory bodies, and the TT Club, of course. All right. And what was the TT Club? Of course, that's the insurance. And number 6, what else did we learn? We're always trading off robustness versus agility. But if Andrew was given a choice, you know which one he would choose. It would be, yes, agility on all costs. And robustness just results in fragility in the supply chain. Number 7, big unseen events. Like we all saw that ship that blocked the Suez Canal, but not much media attention was given to the COVID lockdown of the Yancheng shipping terminal, northern China. And, you know, you're talking about 30-40 million TFUs of capacity per year from that port alone. Not much media attention was given to the backlogs, especially with all of these ships waiting to be unloaded outside of LA, Long Beach. And, you know, the analogy of the A380 and the size of the ships just keep on getting larger and larger and larger. We're waiting for the Panama Canal to be broadened even further. And of course, you know, not to mention this publicly of the profiteering, and last year was the biggest year of profits for shippers. This year, even bigger. And finally, and this is a big concern that I have, is this switching of containers that maybe once have had chemicals and now let's put food in it, or chemicals were carried in a container and now it's got food. And related to that is paying people on time. Like these are things that something like the technology offered by blockchain and the linkage of documentation will reveal to the world. And that's something that has to be massaged into that value capture that you're trying to sell to clients. So like there's 8 items that I've learned tonight, and there's a ton of detail within each of those 8. We could actually make up several weeks of teaching in each of those areas. Andrew, it's been amazing. I'm so grateful that you've been with us now for an hour and a half now, and I think it's amazing. You've given your evening time to us. Thank you so much, Andrew. Can you give a round of applause to Andrew? And I mean, turn your volume on and let's hear your hands.
Thanks, guys. That's really very kind. And look, there was some fantastic questions from pretty much everyone tonight. You know, really, really good questions. When you download the pack from, you know, Dr. O'Connor, you'll see my email address is on there. You know, please feel free to reach out, connect me on LinkedIn. You know, networking is important, guys. But I've really, really, really enjoyed this. And look, remember, you know, you'll be sitting here in the future. Give back. Always give time to people in the industry, because you guys are going to be tomorrow's leaders. So make sure that you don't hoard information and share it as much as you can. Ecosystems is the way forward, guys.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And
Okay, we'll take a break now and let Andrew get back to his evening. Thank you, Andrew. And
Thanks.
don't forget,
See you guys. All the
connect
best.
with Andrew on LinkedIn. Okay, make sure you connect with him. Keep reaching out. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Wow. That you know, he could have talked about blockchain on its own, but just the extra information that you learn about the whole logistics industry through the process of just trying to understand how they themselves are creating value for the industry is amazing. And I hope that you got something out of this as well. And do go into LinkedIn. If you don't do anything else tomorrow, go into LinkedIn and maybe you write a recommendation under Andie's profile. You write a recommendation, how you felt you were inspired by him, what you learned from him, and give back in that way. I think Andrew would very much appreciate that. He would really appreciate that. And you just never know that a connection of Andie's in the future may help you get a job and different things like that. So just keep that in mind. That's what we mean by the network. And that's so critical. We keep that going. Let's have a break and I'll see you back in, let's have about 8 minutes. Is that okay? What do you think? All right. Thank you.